Hello, everybody. I am here with Christian, and we're going to speak about gene key or gate 46 that he happens to have 5 times in his human design chart. So it was quite easy to decide which key we're going to speak about. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Finally, we get to speak live. We've had a little bit of conversation about the gene keys and human design a little bit over the last couple of years, and so nice opportunity to go deep on this.
Yeah, and I guess you were saying that the gene keys was kind of your way in, and that human design is something that you discovered after the gene keys, right?
Yes, I discovered the gene keys first through Bina and Elijah at Wonderland, probably I think in 2012. So it goes back quite a while. And in the first year of discovering it, I went really, really deep. And as a part of my process initially, I taught intro classes to the gene keys, and because actually sharing something with people is a great way for me to deepen my own learning. So I jumped right in and hosted classes, and it was only later I discovered the human design, and I haven't studied it enough to really understand how to use it yet. And we were talking a little bit about that in terms of my chart just before we started this call, and so we can revisit what we talked about.
Yeah, I feel for you. So you are, let me see, I think you are a projector and your ego projected. So you're not, if you were a manifesting generator or a generator, it would be like, oh, you're like everybody else. Or, but actually you have a design that it's quite, that it's not everybody's design. So I feel like that could also be, for you, there is, I guess, wisdom in using, I always feel like using both systems are cool. And like you were saying, in your human design, or actually let me share it from now. If we're looking at your, is it this one? If we are looking at your gene keys, we're going to see that you have the 46 twice, and that, like you were saying, that's already a lot. But then we go to your human design and we see that suddenly, it's 6 times. It's like, five times. 5 times.
Yeah, 5 times. Yeah, and and so I know the Star Pearl hasn't been released yet, but I'm seeing that I guess it's where I have 2 of the 46 is in Uranus. So I guess that relates to creativity.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember whether actually the 3rd line was considered alchemy in do you remember the 3rd line?
I think I can't remember in the start.
Yeah.
But it's possible, yeah, because they all are cool. All are cool. I think mine is crystallization or something, but yeah, that's probably
right.
That sounds.
Yeah, and so in terms of creativity, certainly that delight, is a part of when I've been doing creative things. It's like the delight of just immersing myself in creativity is huge. And earlier we were talking about this kind of strange luck that I've noticed throughout my life, and even though there's the shadow tendency of seriousness also is a huge part of my story. And since my teen years have struggled with depression, so there's that energy of taking things too seriously, and but even during those periods I would still have like strange good luck. So it's definitely an important gene key for me, and I feel I guess I'm at a place where I'm wanting to, or exploring how to shift from letting the magic of that gene key just happen to more actively activating it and participating and creating more of that, especially immersing in the delight. And because at the times when I've felt most like myself there is this really natural delight that I have for life. And, you know, it's not based on external circumstances. It kind of just bubbles up inside, where life just seems so incredibly cool, like amazing and full of so many magical things and so much potential. And I love it when I'm in that place, and when that's and there's a big contrast for when I'm too serious, and then the energy kind of constricts and shuts down. So yeah, I'm really curious about, in my own process, of how to, like, I mean, I got 5 of them, so it's like, how can I sprinkle that around in a more conscious and deliberate way?
Right. So let me show again. So what I was commenting on before is that, you know, you have it in a defined G center, so it means that you can always trust it. It's something that the energy comes from you and goes out in the world. Whereas in the open centers, I mean, you are projectors, you have a lot of white or open centers, so a lot of your activations are always kind of filtering out what's yours and what somebody else's. But the beautiful
Right.
thing with the 46 is that even when you're in depression, or even when you're in the low frequencies, kind of, you can always trust that it comes for you, that it's part of your process.
Yeah.
um, and I feel like something that I'm, when you're also saying how to tap in more to it, or how to, I feel you are a projector, and we know that recognition, you know, projectors are here to guide others and to get recognition for it. And also when I look at your gene keys, you have this second line in your pearl of recognition, so there's like this kind
Yeah.
of double recognition. And somehow we, in human design, will always say, oh, we have to wait for the invitation, and there's often a lot of despondency for projectors, because you just have to wait and wait and wait. But I feel like what I often say to projectors is, you know, start to invite with things that don't drain your energy, because you're not here to be like to work hard and to do it like, you know, so many hours a day. But if there are things that you feel delight about, if there are things that you feel
Yeah.
ecstasy about, to start to share about those things, because that is going to create rings on the water. And then instead of just being kind of backbound and waiting, it's like it's starting to invite people to your delight, and then the people are going to see that you are, you know, the preciousness of a projector. Not everybody see it, and those people that don't see it are not part of your tribe, I guess.
Yeah.
And you have, I mean, also there is something with your culture being a first line as well. There is something that you're also not always doing things together with others. It's almost like, I don't know, I would love to hear what you're doing, you know, what do you do in your life? Because it's
Yeah.
an interesting 5-5 in your vocation, the 46 one. How does that show up in your everyday life?
You know, yeah, I've reflected on both of those things that you just mentioned. So, um, you know, I guess what I'd say is that I am naturally quite introverted, and also I'd say it a different way. I'm quite self-contained. I do spend most of my time alone, and I'm really comfortable with that. And however, there has to be a balance between the time that I spend alone and when I'm out in the world. Now, what I've noticed is that um, if I'm in my element and I am picking the right situations to be in socially and who I'm connecting with, then there's a side of me that kind of comes out, which is more naturally extroverted. It's more playful, and uh, that delight. You know, I revel in quality connection. Um, I don't particularly like being around lots of people for the sake of being around people. If I'm in that kind of situation when I'm not really meant to be there, I just get very quiet, and it's better for me to just leave. So the one in my culture is I definitely, the things that I do, like I'm a self-initiator. I don't need other people to motivate me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of the 5 and in the core and the vocation, there's obviously, there is also an urge to be out there and to share. And a sense of responsibility to inspire others and help others. So I think there's just a balance and an interplay. um, there's a balance that I have to get right, in terms of how much time I spend alone and how much time and where I spend my energy out in the world.
Right. I actually like for the profile 2-4, the way that we speak about it in human design, we say it's a hermit, because the
Yeah,
two, we say it's a dancer, and in the gene keys, and we can think, oh, he wants to dance all the time, but actually it's quite picky. It doesn't
yeah,
want to dance with everybody. It wants to pick the right dance partner, and
yeah,
that's very right, because also the relationships are a big, you could say, it's a challenge for the second line. And that's also why Richard says in the evolution, break out of disappointment by fulfilling yourself first, because if you go
yeah.
out there and try to have other people like bringing you delight or bringing you ecstasy, probably
Right.
it's going to lead to more disappointment than anything else.
Yeah, and I definitely over the years have gotten even more picky in terms of who I spend time with, and I go through periods of where I'm more in my hermit shell, and when I come out more into the world. So it's I think just having the sensitivity of the right timing for that is really important for me.
Right. And then there is your Radiancy celebration. So I'm wondering, it's like that's a beautiful one too, but that could be shut down by too much expectations or too much wanting recognition or something like that. So have you found the balance to not go into expectations, but more being that kind of like not knowing what's coming and in the flow of the 42?
um, I think I have a good balance in terms of not having too strong of an expectation. Detachment feels pretty natural for me. Um, Definitely there. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think I strongly have expectations. I mean, I definitely have things I desire and I would like to have happen, and but it doesn't seem to be. Uh, I mean, it shows up in relationship. I mean, it's when we're vulnerable to, in a good way, to connecting with someone, and um, it's hard not to. I think probably the biggest expectation is when things are good to expect that it will continue. Like
Mm-hmm.
probably for me, that's a more challenging expectation. To not necessarily adjust quickly enough when things are changing.
Yeah.
I don't think I generally go into things with huge expectations. So having that a little more flexibility and flow at the subtleties of when things are changing can sometimes be a little challenging.
Yeah, I wonder because when I look at your chart, so the 46 in line 3, it's your south node and it's the same on both sides for your Uranus. And that's actually the activation in my EQ. So I kind of
Okay.
know how to relate to it through my EQ. But what I'm
Yeah.
wondering, you're saying the changes. So what can we say something? Is there something to say about the 46 in line 3 and how that shows up? Because is it failing with the light, or is it just in the experience of it? And that's why, like, well, is there, I think there might be something that we want to say about the 46-3.
So the one in the creativity sphere, I don't know. Like I don't know what to say about that specifically. I mean, let's kind of talk around it a little bit, because I am not in a highly creative phase at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the challenges that I had previously when I was like really deep in the creative flow, which at the time primarily was music, writing music. The biggest challenge I had was becoming ungrounded in the process, where the flow of creativity was so strong and so constant that it was really hard to I would get so hyper and
Right.
because the energy would just increase so much, and I didn't I didn't know how to adjust to that amount of throughput of energy.
Right.
That was one of the big experiences I had of not knowing how to balance that with other things in my life. And certainly we see that a lot of that kind of tendency in, people who are solely dedicated to being artists, where it's so all consuming that other parts of their life can suffer.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know exactly. I mean, does that kind of trigger any thoughts for you around the Uranus?
Well, I see that in the design side, in human design, is your south node as well. So it's kind of, if we think astrologically, that would be something that you already know. And I think it's something that is with what you just said. I would think it has to do with the programming partner as well, because when we look in your human design, you have the channel of the shaman, or the channel of that kind of energy, the
Yeah,
5125, and that is from your G center to your will center, and that is that kind of surge of energy, and
yeah,
especially when you have that much openness in your root center, in your sacral, on both the emotional and the splenic, that is a lot of energy to hold. And I can
yeah,
understand, and it kind of comes through the creative expression of your open throat. I can absolutely understand how that
yeah,
can become too much, and
yeah,
that the third line is like, this third line is playing with experience, and it's playing with energy, but that kind of energy, it's a
yeah,
lot of energy. So
yeah. I mean, I've had experiences where, I've, spontaneously, I mean, I'll feel like I'm high, and I'm not on any drugs or anything. It's just, there'll be a natural high. And, there's such a change in my brain chemistry, when, I mean, in the 51 that you were referring to, I mean, it can be so intense,
yeah.
um, and, there seems to be I mean, I guess, let's talk a little more about like the open centers in the root, because I've described that sometimes when that happens, I feel ungrounded, so I'm wondering what would be a way to create more grounding so that those other energies can flow more freely without kind of burning me out, I guess.
Right. So let's see. I can share here. Is this the one that I'm sharing? Or actually, I want to share this one. Let's see. Okay, this is right. Yeah, I mean, from a human design perspective, we would say that we want you to live from your defined centers. I mean, what you could trust is really your defined centers. But here, ego projected. So I'm wondering if it's because, what is it that is destabilizing you? Is it the creative process, or is it the environment you're in? Like, what is the destabilizing part? Is what I would like to ask, and go from there. Actually,
Well, so the destabilizing, uh, I mean, environment is part of it. When I was being highly creative with music, uh, the the challenge was really more, uh, if I didn't have to worry about kind of day-to-day concerns, in whether that be financial things and like schedules and those kind of things, and I could just lose myself in the process, even if it felt destabilizing in one way, if I kind of knew that everything else was taken care of, I could go down the rabbit hole of that creativity until the natural arc of that concluded, and then kind of maybe go into more of a rest period. I think the challenge for me, environment, including, those worldly concerns, which, and it did create a challenge, because you know, um, when I was diving down the creative path, I had a very long attention span, and I could forget everything else. And you know, I guess also another thing that would be challenging if I were in a relationship at the time, and there were periods where I was, and that became challenging because it'd be like if I had scheduled to, you know, go over to my girlfriend's place for dinner, if I'm deep in that flow, stopping and having to think about something that's completely outside of the flow that's happening was a real challenge. So I think for me, the environment would be if I knew I had this the possibility of just diving in and not worrying about anything else, it wouldn't feel as destabilizing.
Right. No, I love that you say that, because, you know, the 62 that you have both in your life's work, or both in your personality sun and earth, or personality sun and moon, that's like that is the concentration, kind of the precision of like what you are in that thing that you're precisely focusing on, which was the creative process. And
Yeah.
then the 61 is that inspiration that just comes in, and then you're ego projected, so like you're kind of just here to listen to yourself and your own will in a way. And you
Yeah.
have that soul activation, which is the SQ is the 51, and then your north node is the 25. So it's like your shamanic channel is part of the innermost core, which is your SQ, and also your north node. So there is
Yeah.
for anybody to come and tell you that you're not supposed to be in your own timing and flow with that. For me, you know, and you're 2-4, so you're here to be natural in your creativity and in your
Yeah.
flow. It's actually, you know, I feel like you were doing the right thing for you, but again, the circumstances weren't right for you, and maybe you had the emotional pressure to be somewhere, or you have, you know, this like, it's more the pressure from the outside that wouldn't allow you to be
Yeah.
in that creative process, whatever time. I mean, time and space doesn't really exist with the 61, or the light language of the 62, that is spoken in a way that's never come through before.
Well, and also having the 5.5 in my core vocation too, that sense of timelessness. Um, you know, you know, it makes sense. I mean, and also that the 62 is very much a part of, you know, my design, you know, both as a composer and the work that I do as an audio engineer. I mean, details, I can get so lost in details. And, you know, there's a period where I was working on learning how to write orchestration, you know, in which case there were like 100 tracks of audio, and, you know, very complex. And you know, once I got on the flow on that, it's like if I could just keep going until I was done. I mean, the challenge could be sometimes I'd forget to eat, and, you know, and like I would not sleep on regular schedules, and, you know, there's certain costs to that if you do that for too long. However, it also was incredibly fun to, you know, to care so deeply about the details,
Mm.
and when the results, like when I could listen back to something and just, you know, hear how incredibly beautiful it was, and you know, so yeah, I guess I mean, I've been longing to get back to being able to do that. And, you know, I've had people over the years advise me, um, you know, uh, you know, in terms of creativity, like, well, why don't you just do a little bit, like an hour a day? And I'm like, no. It's like opening up that portal of creativity, putting a time limit on it. It's like I'd almost rather not open the portal, because if I open the portal, it feels too frustrating to not be able to dive fully into it.
Yeah, and here I feel like you're completely coming back to the 46 again. And, you know, for me, I have the 46, and I see all the channels go from the G center to the sacral. They are tantric, right? And
Right.
in Tantra, it's like, we go into it in the experience and we live it fully. And whatever comes up, comes up. So you can't just cut it off. Like that is the commitment is the 29. So when we are in a tantric process, when we are in a creative process, then we say yes to the process, and we say yes until it ends, basically. So I think,
Right.
and also I think the 42 has to do with cycles as well. So there is this, I can see how, why the 46 doesn't want to stop, because it knows where it has to be. Like we say, it's the rainmaker, it's always in the right place at the right time. So when it is in the creative process, why would it cut it off? Why would it stop the wholehearted engagement in something?
Yeah.
That would be then from the pressure of the outside, or how it should be spoken, or how it should be felt, or how it, so
Right. Yeah. Uh, yeah, finding our unique path, and I think that's the thing I love about the Gene Keys is having a way to reflect on qualities that are in us that we already see. However, when it's spoken of in a different way, we get to reflect on and see ourselves in a new light. And especially speaking of the gift, especially, so I mean, doing our shadow work is really important. However, knowing where it leads us, like what is your sweet spot. And you know when I've done coaching for people in the past, I mean, I'm always wanting to find a way to inspire people to really find who they are, who they're meant to be. Because when people are in their sweet spot and they're living their best life, it's actually best for everyone else too.
mhm.
And people get really stuck in the kind of patterns of like, well, this is the way it's meant to be, and like even and some people are comfortable with the certainty of, say, a 9 to 5 job and that kind of thing, and maybe that's the right thing for them. But so many people are locked into lives and patterns that don't really suit their highest purpose. You know.
Yeah, I had a conversation today with another. I'm a 4/6, and we were speaking about, the fourth line is doing what you love, and then that's how you serve the world. And for you as a 2/4, basically that's your soul. That's that part of
Yeah.
you speaking, that that is so important for you. And that's also like the veneration, that when you do something, to not be stuck in like the fear of failure, or not having it look like people want it to look, or living up to the expectations. No, the fourth line for you wants to love life, wants to celebrate life. And
Yeah.
that's why I don't think there are many conventional things that you could do that
No.
would fit in.
No, it's been, and certainly the shadow of failure has haunted me all my life. And in some ways, it feels like in terms of success, I'm going to be a late bloomer. I mean, I've had a lot of successes with uh, in terms of experience in life. I mean, but in terms of conventional success, that has eluded me. However, like Richard says in the Gene Keys book, the only failure, what does he say? He says it's really the realization that there is no such thing as failure. It's like, so it's a reorientation of perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, what was I going to say? I was going to say something about the freedom and the dancer part of it. Like in Qigong, I did some training in Tibetan shamanic Qigong, which is a formless Qigong. And I mean, I've studied other forms, and it always feels so, like, for me, studying a form, whether it's Tai Chi or any of the Qigong forms, feels too constrictive.
Hmm.
And having to learn, like, okay, this is the exact sequence, do the sequence. I'm like, it feels like, can't I just be natural? And so this one style that I found was actually all about the idea that when you stopped, well, when you unravel and undo I guess what, and some people will call like the tendencies to be a cultivated human as opposed to a natural human.
Mm.
Because you look at the animal world, I mean, tigers don't go to the dojo to learn how to fight like a tiger. I mean, they fight like a tiger because they are a tiger.
Right.
And so as a human, you know, learning to move, and I think somewhere Richard says like the second line is here to teach people how to move. Do you remember the 6 line?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm also looking at your 34 too, which is the 34 is like, I see the majesty of the lion, you know, or the tiger.
Yeah, yeah.
That combination, the 34 in line 2 in your EQ, it's kind of, it's part of your expression. It's part of like, so and the second line, movement, because it's a physical line. It's the 1 and the 2
Yeah.
are physical. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that kind of reminds me that, I mean, to what I was saying earlier about like how do I create the groundedness, and actually it is movement that does that for me. So whether it be hiking or going to the gym, like anything physical, the
Right.
more I do something physical, the more grounded I feel in my body. And I think it's a great antidote to the ways in which the 46 or the 51 can like blow me out, in terms of, because those energies are they need somewhere to be. They need containment.
Vessels come through or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the 46 is related to blood in terms of the physiology. And I know in Chinese medicine they talk about um, you know, agitation, you know, which is an element of Shen, you know, like if and that can be, you know, even anxiety, like as an imbalance. And they say that if the Shen isn't grounded in the blood, that, you know, you'll be too spacey.
Right.
And so I guess in this case, like moving my blood, you know, so movement, you know, is really helpful. So I've actually just recently started coming back to the Tibetan shamanic qigong, and it feels really good. It feels really good to move that way because it's so free.
Right. And that also makes me think about your attraction, which is the 22-6. And for me, the 6th line is also the tantric line when it comes to sensuality and sexuality. And it's the innocent. It comes back to all the forms and no forms. There is no right way. And it has all the lines, it has all the color of the rainbow. So it's also that same flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a little question for you. When is the Star of Pearl coming out? Because I'm really curious to dive more into that. I mean, the one, maybe we could talk a little bit. I know this is outside of what most people in the Gene Keys kind of know about. But the stability sphere.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I have the 3-2 there.
Yeah.
And you know, I only kind of recently, I mean, I was at the Sacred Seals retreat in British Columbia. I was probably 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at the end of that Richard, kind of at the after party, that whole Star of Pearl really kind of activated. And so it's taken a little while to get out into the world. However, I mean, this, you know, Richard said then that, you know, if you're going to do anything in the Star Pearl, it's like cultivate the stability. So I haven't really contemplated that much, but I mean, I would have to even look it up. I can't remember what the
it's fearlessness. I also have the line too, and it's interesting that you're saying this because we were just speaking about your attraction. So stability comes together with the SQ. So basically, we are in that pathway of individuation, you know,
right.
the vertical pillar. So, and it has what I've been looking at for 2 years now is that the stability, which is Saturn, the sign Saturn, and then we have the SQ, which is the sign Venus, and how that is the inner masculine and feminine, and how, like you're saying, to contemplate the stability, like that has to be a human being that is whole. You need both both energies, and there's like an alchemy that happens with Venus and Saturn, and how they support each other, and how they can be. They're always going to be in a marriage, but they can be in a bad marriage or in a good marriage.
Yeah. Well, and the line one that I have in the SQ, if I recall correctly, that's rhythm and routine. And so, that is a big part of it. Like when I have good rhythms and routines with my, daily life, it really helps me a lot. And actually, I mean, in some ways, the more I have that, the more stability that I have, the more fearless I can be. And stability for me is mostly internal, but the environment for me can include, what, how do I start my day, and what space am in. And I, for the most part, really prefer spending a lot of time alone. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love having mornings to myself and not having to interact with other people. Like what sets my day is my relationship with myself, not with other people or what's going on out in the world.
Right. Yeah, I mean that 46 in your culture, 46.1, and even the Pearl 46.2 is like, it's kind of, it's still you being a projector, and kind of tuning into one person at a time maybe, and choosing your
Yeah.
relationships, and so that
Yeah.
that makes sense. I would say though that you're in your marriage, if we speak about it like that, having the SQ, which is 51.1, and then the stability that is 3.2. I mean, like the third gene key is kind of, it's always new, it's always about innovation, it's about playfulness. It's the one that is always the child, basically, in a good sense. And then the
Yeah.
51 is all about initiation. So somehow when I look at the imprinting of, like, if we say that this is the seed,
Yeah.
that of what you are, I would say the fearlessness is almost to tell people, like, I work like this. I'm an ego projected projector, and I am in my own flow, in my own inspiration, in my own precision. And I
Yeah.
have the 46 5 times. I don't know how long time something's going to take. I'm in the process. When I'm in the process,
Yeah.
this is me. And to fulfill yourself first through that. And then the fourth line is going to draw to you the right friendships, the people that can be there. I mean, the fourth line is breath as well in the purpose. So the people that can breathe with you in your rhythm, and
Yeah.
that also goes back to the, like you said, rhythm and routine in the SQ. So it feels like you're in a marriage. That fearlessness comes to be like, this is what I do in the world, this is my process. And
Yeah.
sometimes even, the seriousness and the depression, when we have the individual circuitry, which is, for example, the 61, and when it's part of it, it's not always. I have the first gene key as my evolution, and I've had to accept that the void is like the pre-works of my creativity. So then also
Right.
depression sometimes it's like felt in another way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a process to get to know ourselves, to really know ourselves, and ultimately so that we can completely be ourselves. That's the ultimate goal. And the Gene Keys has been a big part of me discovering myself even more. So
Yeah, and I know you have another call. I just want to ask you if you have any, like we were speaking about the 46, but do you have any advice to people that either have it, or people that, like, live close to people that have it in their life's work or something? Is there something, some advice that you could give with this gene key that you have discovered through your own way of having it in so many places?
um, gosh, I don't, let me think about that for a second. I guess, being able to, um, the thing about being in the right place at the right time, depending on what else is going on in the rest of your design. I mean, for me, when I'm having more challenging times, um, a practice of gratitude is really important for me. And one of the things I'll kind of, my go-to thing is to say thank you. Now, where I think this is relevant is, if you're thinking, I need to figure out how to be in the right place at the right time, you're missing the point. Because if you actually really go deep enough into it, you are in the right place at the right time right now. And when
Right.
you actually go deep enough into that idea, and so even the seriousness, if that expresses itself as depression, when you just go deep enough into it, it's like, what is happening right now is what is meant to be happening right now. And the more acceptance you have of that, and yourself, taking delight in that you exist, like that is the fundamental part of that, I think. And when you can really just delight in that you exist, the set of circumstances that are around you, um, they're not the primary thing. And so, because if you're chasing after delight, that's not the same thing. I mean, it's like you are delight. It
Yeah.
is the essence of who you are. And so, yes, there can be relevancy to look at, how do I express that more into my world and to my life? Well, I think the thing that I've discovered is, you have to start first with, like, I am delight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like you wove, how do you say, you got
Well,
back to the 40, 46.3, because it's like there is, and also to your purpose, the 32, there is no failure.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the thing. You are in the right place at the right time. And the 46.3 realizes that experience in that moment is that's the delight. That's the journey. That's what we are saying yes to.
yeah,
Even when it's not always easy. And I guess that is where I have been sometimes escaping with my third line in the 46 in my EQ, because I didn't think it was the right experience. So then I escaped from it. But when I
yeah.
stay, the EQ is very much like that. When we stay with it, then the magic can actually come through. But if you run away, no, then then it's not the same. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been delightful. And I do have to prep for another call soon. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
inviting me. And I hope this is interesting and inspiring and helpful to others. And thank you for the beautiful service you're offering by going deep with one-on-one explorations on, one gene key at a time. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a beautiful evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye now.